Welcome to another broadcast of Pyramids on Mars UFO Radio on the Artist First Radio Network. All past shows are archived. You can pick them up at artistfirst.com. And now your host, a great musician who has had at least one gig with extraterrestrials, Mr. Kevin Estrella.
Good evening. Welcome to Pyramids on Mars UFO Radio. We are now into October, and oh man, I'm telling you, I have been so excited for this show for such a long time. This is going to be a show that people will be talking about. Tonight we are going to be interviewing real extraterrestrials, real ETs, and how, and I'll basically I'll tell you the story. A friend of mine introduced me, and he said, you know what, there's a group of ETs who are using Twitter. I'm like, no way, get out of here. He says, yeah, you have to check out at Sandia Wisdom on Twitter. And I check it out, and I'm following them for days, and I'm realizing, my God, they're real. This is real. And it's been an amazing venture. I've known Sandia and ET now for probably about 6 or 8 months, and I've become really good friends with Sue Walker, their telepath here on Earth, who does all of their tweeting for them. And Sue, we're going to be talking with Sue tonight, and we got the whole gang who's waiting here underneath the Sandia Mountains. We got a huge crowd of Ponti, and that's the planet they come from. They come from the planet Ponti, which is the 5th planet orbiting Zeta Reticuli, and they are Zetas. So they're they don't like being called grays because they don't call us brown or white. But we're going to be interviewing Sue Walker, and she's going to be translating, basically being the voice for Sandia. And the great thing for you guys tonight is we are opening the floor for the first time. You guys will be able to ask questions. You can do that by emailing us at dj@artistfirst.com. That's dj@artistfirst.com. If you want to ask questions, please email us, and we will be taking calls. dj@artistfirst.com. Now, to understand Sue Walker, she is a professional telepath. She's been a telepath for many years, and she's helped the authorities in the United States with different cases. She's been a telepath all her life. She's very in tune, and we've had amazing discussions in regards to with Sandia and as to why they're here. There's 4 of them. There's Tilcum, who's their commander. There's Jruti, and she's a girl. There's Teeny, she's a girl. And then there is Radar, my good old buddy. And he's their long range telepath pilot and social media, media guru. He was basically hired here to come to the planet to watch everything on TV or movies that's related to extraterrestrials. So he's a really smart guy. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Sue Walker. Thank you for being on the show. It's going to be one awesome night.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. I surely appreciate it. And the gang is listening in underneath the mountain. And I suppose I probably should kind of explain to your listeners a little bit about how all this started, because I surely did not expect it. All right. Let's start at the beginning. Before I moved to the Albuquerque area, and that's where the Sandia Mountain is, it's on the eastern edge of the greater Albuquerque metropolitan area. It is not the mountain that the Sandia National Laboratory is located in. That's south, about 10 miles, in the Manzano Mountains near Kirtland Air Force Base. So I want to make that distinction that Sandia Mountain is not the location nor affiliated with Sandia National Labs. All right. For me, let me give you a little background of me. for about the last 27 plus years, oh my God, I can't believe it's been that long, I have been a professional detail clairvoyant and medical intuitive. From very, very early on, I was the different one. I was the one that picked up things before other people. I was the one that had dreams that came true. But I didn't realize the level of detail that I had under my control until I was almost 30. My friends kicked me in the seat of the pants to pursue doing psychic work for a living because I was better than the people that they were paying to go see. And so I started business. I started officially in 1990. And so this is 27 plus years now. I have worked for the CIA. I have worked for quite a few of the three-letter agencies. Okay, we'll just put it that way. And all of that work has been volunteer. I had the wonderful opportunity to meet and have some wonderful, deep discussions, long discussions with Dr. Dale Graff, who headed up the CIA's Project Stargate for many years. And he's retired in the Chesapeake Bay area. When I was very, very young, my earliest experience with a star nation of any kind, I must have been somewhere between 3.5 and 4.5, because the location was unique, and I remember at that age being terrified watching a reptilian skin pass through the wall of my grandmother's house to the outside. That was a very, very distinct, different memory. I began having other Star Nation experiences, and I didn't know what they were at the time. And I look back now and go, holy bucket. I didn't realize that that was a visitation. I can tell you that my experiences with the Zetas began to my actual memory of being afraid of them from about age 7, 8 on. Okay. It took me a long time to start to not be afraid of those experiences. And I had some very, very detailed conscious experiences, upfront experiences as an adult, 1998 to 2001 in central Iowa. Experiences where my neighbors and my entire family observed UFOs hovering over our property, between our houses, at the end of our cul-de-sac, or crop circles within 10 miles of where we lived, or other individuals who were having experiences with the taller species of Zeta that people frequently call the tall whites or the creamy whites. When I was in Iowa, for reasons I did not understand at the time, I knew in some fashion that New Mexico was calling me, but it didn't make logical sense for me. All of my children were in central Iowa. I had been married and divorced twice. I was single. I could go anywhere I wanted. But I somehow felt the pull to come down this way. It wasn't until I met my now spouse, White Otter, back in 2012, that I recognized the reason that New Mexico had a draw. Because within 48 hours of meeting the man, I knew that I had known this individual before, and we had work to do. And we had a real strong bond. And that proved out to be true. We got married on New Year's Eve of last year, 2016. So we've been married now about 9 months. when I first was dating Otter, the first time I met him, we lived 1,200 miles apart. And while we spoke every day, I needed to see how this man lived to make sure that this was going to be a real thing, relationship-wise. And so I took Amtrak and I came down to the Albuquerque area to visit him at his home. And I'd planned to stay, 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how it went that first time. Didn't know. Was kind of open-ended about it. And so I'd been at his home about 10 days. And I was still doing my psychic work over the phone with all of my regular clients. But we were relaxing in the living room one evening, and I think we were watching one of the talent shows. I think it was America's Got Talent. And we were commenting to each other on one of the particularly good acts. And suddenly a voice popped up. Yes, that was wonderful. And my head whipped around, and I stared out the window to the east, and I went, who the heck was that? And it came from a very specific location. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't in the room. I've done this at that point in time, I'd done this for more than 20 years. I know a ghost. I know a negative entity when I run into them. This was no ghost. This was clear as a bell. This was as if this person was in the room with us. And I just kind of went, what? Now what? Okay. So that was the first time. Well, over the next couple of days, the voice would pop up randomly, comment about something that we were watching on the news, or a conversation that White Otter and I were having about, psychic skill set, or books that we'd read, or history, or things that we'd done, or whatever. It was just random. And finally I asked White Otter, you ever hear a voice coming from the mountain? And I was a little about it, and he said, oh, them. Oh, yeah, ever since I moved in. And I said, so are they? And he said, I don't know. I just didn't pay him any never mind. They're just part of the voices that come and go around here. And you have to remember, White Otter's been a shaman now for over 30 years. And so voices to him, spiritual stuff to him, yeah, it's regular old everyday stuff, so he just didn't pay attention. Well, I started to pay attention. And after a few days, I just got really tired of referring to it as the voice from the mountain. And so it just nickname. And it was the Sandia Mountain. That was the location the voice came from. So I just started calling it Sandia. And the funniest thing happened. The minute I decided to nickname the voice from the mountain Sandia,
which means watermelon.
Yeah, in Spanish, the word Sandia means watermelon. And the Sandia Mountain is called that because on the top, the geological features look like little green and white stripes, like the stripes on a watermelon. Thus the name. And so I dubbed the voice from the mountain Sandia, and suddenly he pipes up, and he said, oh, watermelon head, that'll work. And I'm going, what? And it was the start of my understanding that I didn't quite know who I was dealing with, but he sure had a quirky sense of humor. So it's not until a couple of months later I keep talking to Sandia, and he keeps talking back. He's a nice guy, kind of. I think if you have Anthony Hopkins' depth of voice, that would be close to the voice of Sandia, okay? So I've got this nice gentleman's voice in my head.
That's Tilcom, right?
It's Tilcom. And he doesn't tell me his real name for a couple of months. And when he finally admits to where he's from, as somebody who's experienced really unusual beings and strange stuff in my life and my career, I'd kind of figured out he wasn't from here. But he said, I said, how do you say your real name? And he said, Tukum. And I said, whoa, slow that down. He said, Tukum. I said, slower. Tukum. I said, Tilkum. And he went, close enough. And then he spelled it for me. And it was T-L-K-M. And he said, our language seldom uses vowels unless they are borrowed from another culture, because in any spoken language, the first thing that changes over time is the vowel sound. But usually the consonants remain the same. And our writing system found that leaving out the vowels, people understood the language anyway. And it developed that way. So our language is written with no vowels. And I went, oh, okay. So I'm talking to this guy, and he says, I said, where's home? And he said, well, you know your constellations, because when I was in college, ran a planetarium, actually. I was a planetarium hostess. So I know my night sky. And I know more than the average person about both astronomy and astrology, actually. But when Tilcom said, you know the constellation Zeta Reticuli, it didn't shock me. He said it's a binary system. The farther of the two stars is ours, and you have to go to the fifth planet there. We call it Puntel. And I said, slow it down. He said, Puntel. And he purposely made this little lip flap poof sound when he said the P, Puntel. And when he spelled it for me, it was P apostrophe N-T-L. And I said, Puntel. He said, yes. If you must write it in English, or in, something that people would read it as an English word, P-O-N-T-E-L-L would be close, and that would be a good pronunciation. And I went, oh, okay. So he said, then we are the Punti. And that's how he introduced me to where he's from. I started asking all kinds of questions about, how long he'd been here and when he arrived. And he said he studied for 20 years, knowing that this was the mission, at home, before coming to the moon base in 1990. Observed Earth, monitored, got caught up to speed with current culture, technological capabilities, observation, and other details between 1990 and 1994, and then from the moon base came to the Sandia complex to manage it. Then that was what he told me of his history. So I'm talking to Sandia, or Tilcom, it started in September of 2015, and White Otter and I finally decided that we were going to be a hot item permanently, and I sold my home in central Iowa and moved here in July of 14. During that 13 to 14 time frame, I was back and forth from Iowa to New Mexico, and whenever I was in New Mexico, I'd have chats with Silco about all kinds of things. And when I was in Iowa, I didn't bother even trying to connect with him. And I didn't know if I lacked the capability or if there was a limiting factor for the telepathic communication. I had no idea. All I knew is the minute I got back to New Mexico, conversations started up again on a daily basis. A daily basis. Now, have we seen Tilcom or any of his crew here at our house? or on our property? I guess I would have to say the answer is yes. Not only have we woken up to multicolored lights in the backyard, but also glimpses of them in either physical form or, for lack of a better word, you could call it cloaked form, invisible form. Form where you see that slight shimmer like you see in the Alien Predator movies, where it looks like there's a heat shimmer shift.
Yeah.
We catch that, and all the time, both inside and outside the house. Wasn't until late in 2014 that my old computer died the bad death, and I had to get a new one, and so I went and got a Macintosh unit, laptop unit. Got it home, hadn't even gotten it out of the box when Tilcom pipes up and does the first request of me he's ever really done. And hadn't even plugged the doggone thing in yet for the first time. And he said, "Hey, Steve, do me a favor. Download Google Earth. I want to show you something." And I went, "Hey, what? Why?" And I didn't get a response. So it's Tilcom.
This is amazing. Yeah,
We've become past, I suppose, year plus. And he's always been straight with me about things. And if he's got something to show me, then he's got something to show me. So I download Google Earth. And I do what everybody does. I look at where I live first. So I Google Earth Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Google Earth image centers on the Albuquerque big area. And I'm still new to the area. I don't know where anything is. I don't know where the Sandia Mountain is, except that I could kind of go, okay, I know where I live now, but let's see, which direction is east, and I have to orient myself like anybody else. And I'm looking at Albuquerque on Google Earth, and I haven't even been looking at it for 5 minutes. And Sandia pipes up again. He says, "Turn it upside down." And I said, "What?" He said, "Turn it upside down. You always look at it with north at the top. Turn it upside down." And then he went silent again, and I'm going, what the heck is going on here? But Google Earth is as easy as anything to spin. And so just because I turned the image upside down so that north, instead of being at the top of the page, was now at the bottom of the page. And I'm looking at it, and I'm studying it, and I'm pondering, why the heck would Tilcom ask me to turn this Google Earth image upside down? Something's up. I don't know what's up.
People.
Yes, exactly. So I'm looking at this image, and up in the upper left corner, I see some lines in the landscape. And I go, geez, that looks like a face. That's weird. And I kind of move the image over and zoom in on it. And I look at it a little closer, and I'm looking at what looks like a Nazca sort of image, only it's the profile of the head of a cow. And it's big. And I'm new to Google Earth, so I'm trying to figure out how to measure this thing. And going, who in the heck would put the image of a face of a cow in the landscape? What, rancher or farmer? Wait, this is a mountain. This isn't somebody's cow. Wait, how big is this? And then I started to measure. And it was 6 miles by 6 miles inside. Clear as a bell. Created out of contours in the landscape, pine, scrub, geological surface soil colors. And I'm going, how does this work? And my science brain, because back in college, way back when, I have a degree in both animal science and horticulture, but also took a whole lot of pre-med. And so my biological and science brain is looking at this going, wait a minute. And I said, what is this? Is this the only one? And he said, no. This image is one of hundreds of thousands of images embedded in Earth's landscape. He said, if you can find the eye in the landscape, you can find the face. It will always be in perfect proportion. So I started looking for doggone eyes. And I'm looking in the landscape, and I'm surfing around on Google Earth, and I find another eye. And I'm going, okay, is there a face, or am I making this up? And I'm looking, and I'm going, okay, I think I'm too close. I got to back out, see if I can find a face. And I find this face, and it's this huge elephant's head. Tusks, huge ears, eye profile, trunk. And it's really detailed. And so I take the Google Earth tool and I start outlining these things. And I finish outlining what I'm looking at. And then I get the measuring tool and I measure how big this elephant's head is in the landscape. And I go from the tip of the trunk to behind the neck before it drops off into the ocean, because it's on a peninsula somewhere. Because I didn't know where I was on Google Earth. I hadn't stopped to look at taken off all of the markers for the countries and the rivers. Nothing had names on it. All I was looking at was completely just geological landscape. And this elephant's head in exquisite detail pops out. And I measure it from trunk tip to ear tip. It was 777 miles long. And my head just kind of goes on tilt for a second. Because I'm going, how does a 777-mile wide elephant's head get into Earth's landscape? What is this?
And what does he explain that it was? And what is it called?
And Tilcomb pipes up and he says, this is archaeoplanetography. And I said, what? Archaeoplanetography.
Archaeoplanetography.
Species that have dominant influence in an area, their images get embedded into the landscape as part of the history of that location. And he said the history of your planet is written in your landscape.
In the landscape.
So that when you approach the planet and park in high orbit, the first thing you do is observe the largest archaeoplanetography images as you're coming in on your approach. But as you get closer and your orbit decreases, the larger images morph out of focus on purpose, only to be replaced in that same location by smaller, more detailed, and more up-to-date images. So as you descend closer and closer to the surface, the images keep morphing and changing, and the system is also designed so that when you are in an orbit around a planet, as you traverse forward, the images that you're observing passing beneath you also are designed to morph and change as you're going up and down, looking at them from an angle even. And so he starts explaining all of this, and I'm going, whoa, slow down. Slow down. Did you put these images here? He said, no. We did not design this system. The archaeoplanetography system was taught to us by other star nations 16 million years ago when we were ready to first leave our planet and explore our solar system and beyond for the first time. Those who welcomed us with our official first contact taught us the archaeoplanetography system so that when you approach another world, you can observe its history and understand a little bit more about it before you ever step foot. And so dominant species are in the landscape. The history of sentient beings is in the landscape. Star nations who've explored the world or done things with the resources there, their images are in the landscape. Conflicts, lands that were won in battle or conflict or as a gift, those images are in the landscape. And so he began to teach White, Otter, and I how to read and understand the archaeoplanetography system and how to understand the symbols embedded within it. So he started doing that in December of 14 and into 15, and then he began introducing us to other members of the Sandia Mountain crew, because in all of the time that I had been talking to Tilcom, I knew that there were other Ponti in the background. I could sense them, I could see them, but they weren't speaking up, and I didn't want to intrude and ask until I kind of sensed from Tilcom it was time. So in February of 2015, he introduced us to two other members. They weren't new. Two other members of his crew. The first was a gal. Her name is Druti, spelled J-R-O-O-T-I. Her name is borrowed from another language, from another entire planetary culture. It's not a normal Ponti name. That's why it has the vowels in it. Anyway, Druti is communications expert, very knowledgeable about culture and protocol of just about any star nation you want to name that visits Earth. When he was first introduced to us, he was not introduced to us as Radar. He was introduced to us as Rahaz. Rahaz. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, only started with an RH sound. So if you say the Wizard of Oz, Oz with an RH, you get Raz or Raz.
Raz.
But
yeah.
Radar, Raz always had a couple of things. One, a flair for the dramatic. Two, a love of hot. And three, he, of all of the crew members, is unusual. One, even for his people, he's at a genius level. We tease him that he's an idiot savant, but he is, for even the Ponti, extremely intelligent, extremely quick. Tilcom pulled him out of the end of his education on Pontel specifically to come join this mission. And so he, other than being pilot, stellar cartographer, long-range telepath, Tilcom assigned to Rahaz, and we dubbed him Radar because he always wears this cap that looks like radar.
Radar from Mars.
Mm-hmm. So that's where the name originated. But Radar has an assignment from Tilcom that has taken him and us on a journey we never dreamed was possible. And that assignment was very, very simple. Tilcom assigned to Radar, I wish a report is updated on any media that you can find within the past, I suppose 100 years is what he said, that pertains to anything of a UFO, extraterrestrial, alien, or, Star Nation visitor kind of neighbor. What they were trying to do is get an emotional read on the current vibe about what people think about various star nations. And they were doing that and understanding that many Earth humans, pick up their information about star nations from the movies, from television. And so they assigned radar the task of understanding all of those references. So now we have as data, upon T, young, new to Earth, assigned to understand all of these references and suddenly picking up the lingo, picking up the slang, picking up the quotes, remembers everything, and then starts, when Tilcom asks Radar and Drudy to interact with us, we realize that we essentially are talking to somebody that's kind of like a big teenager.
Motorhead.
Yes, and Motorhead. Radar loves anything that will go. I mean, he's asked about motorcycles. He's asked about vintage cars. He's asked about all kinds of vehicles that go on the water. I mean, if it has an engine and it goes, he wants to experience it. When we started talking to Drudy and Radar along with Tilcom, what happened is we began understanding more of their interaction with each other and more of their culture amongst themselves and more of their natural relaxed state, along with their very, very formal, we need to get a task done, emotional, cut things short a little bit, proper state, we'll put it that way, emotional telepathic properness. And so we got a chance to interact and talk to them about what do they do when they're off duty. Excuse me. What do they love? Why in the world would they come, 40 light years across the galaxy to sit their butts inside of a mountain to observe us and talk to us? And so we start asking questions. It wasn't until late May, early June of 15 that Tilcom made another request. And that request came after Radar and he observed me interacting on social media, on Facebook and Twitter. And what he asked was, does social media reach cultures and people across the earth, across country lines and religious lines, equally at the same time? In other words, if I share a Facebook message or a tweet, does it go out to everybody and everybody gets to see it? Unless their country filters those kinds of, social media things, yes. And he said, is it possible for us to have a social media account in order to educate and teach? And I said, I don't see why not. Let me see if I can figure out how to set it up. I'm not very techy, but we'll see what we can do. And so in May of 15, a Facebook account was opened, and in June of 15, the focus went to a Twitter account, and that became the main focus and remains the main focus. And the Twitter account...
Sandia the ET Look up Sandia the ET.
And
everybody.
Sandia. And so Sandia started to share parts of their culture, not their technology. And I have to tell you, both White Otter and I, while we've gleaned bits and pieces about their technology, kind of from aside conversations, we have never, ever directly asked them, can you please explain how this works? Because that's not our focus with them, and that's not Tilcom's mission moving us toward official first contact. When he said that phrase, the first time he ever said that phrase to me in the June of 2015, shortly after the Twitter account was opened, my jaw dropped to the floor. I had
official first contact. That's right.
Wait, what? Back up. Can you please repeat that? I need to know I understood that right. You're talking about part of your mission is preparing Earth for official first contact, and that's why you want the Twitter account. And he said, yes. And I went, okay, because that was an awful lot to swallow. Because I thought, what am I getting myself into?
What are we getting ourselves into?
Exactly. But and yet there was, I have to tell you, Kevin, there was something about that first year and a half talking to Tilcom. He never was dishonest with me. He never dodged a question. He never tried to steer me wrong. There were things that he was trying to explain that we did not have English words for. And so we had to talk in symbolism about some things because I would not have understood it if he used correct terminology at the time. And we were talking concepts instead of specifics.
Yeah.
But I say the wisdom from that man, and I will tell you one of the very first things he said is, we are human too. Sue, we are human, just like you. You are Earth human. We are Ponti. We are Pontel human beings. But we are human. There are many, many kinds and variations of human. You are not the only one. So
pay attention, people.
He was the one that taught me to distinguish Earth human from other kinds of human nations. And then Trudy started teaching us about the various distinctions of groupings of nations that visit Earth on a regular basis, and why they come, and what they look like, and a little bit about the vibe or background of their interaction with him. And in all of this conversation, I say, you have all these individuals that come and go. Don't they ever not get along? And she said, well, to be honest, the vast majority that come here, well, first of all, they don't come because they're interested in you, dear. They come because they're interested in your ocean. And I said, the ocean? And she said, you live on a water planet. You have any idea how rare that is? You have gorgeous oceans. The bards in your oceans are legendary. And I said, the bards, and she said, the whales. The songs of the whales are known all over this area of the galaxy. They're translated and retranslated for years and years and years.
Wow.
And I just went, because it made a hell of a lot of sense.
like that Star Trek episode where they save the whales, and it's amazing. There's so much truth that's hidden inside movies. People, you got to really pay attention. Anything you've watched on TV that's science fiction, it's teaching you something that's reality.
So we start to get to understand the various kinds of reptilian visitors to Earth, or the Sauron, who are not with scale-like skin, but more with a tree frog-like smooth skin. Some light scale, but not the heavy scale. And then they talk to us about the exoskeleton sort of individuals and the multidimensional beings, and the individuals that are the elongated skull folks that come from the Orion area, and just conversation about what are you doing today? Oh, the EA are coming in today. Oh, we got a supply ship coming in. Oh, nope. I talked to my girlfriend and we're going down to the Amazon. I mean, we had regular, everyday conversation with these guys, like you might call up a friend long distance and just chat for a few minutes every day. It wasn't all day long. It isn't. They work all night. They sleep during the day. And so I'd get up early in the morning to chat with them because they were getting off their shift as I was waking up at dawn. And so they would share. And then they'd get tired and need to go to sleep, and I'd have to go on about my day and my business. And then long about 4 or 5 o'clock, I'd start hearing from the mountain again. And I'd say, hey, gang, what's going on? And they'd start talking, and they'd catch up on whatever was happening on the Twitter account in order to further the education and the understanding and continue to get a vibe for the reaction of the truth about what they're putting out, even though they're really different. And nobody on Earth has ever heard of Archaeoplanet Dark 3. And they're talking about being human and all of this different stuff. But anything that they said, our job was to share what they asked us to share as accurately as we could. Hopefully in the morning without typos. Sometimes the telepathic typist needs a little more coffee.
You've never made any mistakes. You're super sharp.
So it wasn't until June of 2016. Yeah, it was June of 2016 that Tilcom introduced us to Teeny. And her real name is Tni, T''Ni, Tni. And Tilcom felt as if his time would be better served not being on call for the Twitter duty all the time, and because part of the mission was to share understanding, and because communication on the Pontees part, their primary language is telepathy. Verbal communication is possible but seldom. It's very difficult. Their vocal cords are weak and unpracticed, is I guess what they say. They love our people that can sing. They are absolutely enthralled with the talent shows, with the singers and the a cappella groups. They just stand there with their mouths open, agog sometimes, listening, feeling, understanding, and being in awe of what we as Earth humans can do with our voices and the power behind it. And so they wanted us to understand their telepathy and how to begin to develop it more, because we have dismissed it and decided it is unworthy of our attention, either people say it doesn't exist, or it happens whenever, but there's no way to control it. And so when Teeny came on the scene, she, within the first few weeks after introducing herself, began to dictate telepathy course. And we have not quite finished the book and workbook, but we're getting real close. Just letting her dictate each chapter as she needs. And then we go back just like anybody and edit. We took the meat of what she dictated thus far, condensed it into a 12-page handout, and the 1st of September this year took a course dictated by an extraterrestrial up to a conference and taught it. And people got it. They got it really, really good. And the course was essentially Telepathy 101. What do you need to do to be able to get yourself into the brain chemistry and brainwave state necessary to begin to develop your neurological connections and your telepathic ear? And what Teeny said made a lot of sense to me, Kevin. What she said is developing your telepathic ear is really a very, very similar process to developing your ear so that you can identify a specific note on a keyboard.
Yeah.
So that if somebody plays a B flat, you can identify it as a B flat versus an F sharp.
Yeah.
And know each note. That ear training is a very, very similar process to telepathic ear training. All you're doing is you're training your neural network to develop the reception. You've got the receptors, but they're just really untrained and unused. They're ignored.
Yes.
And so they're rudimentary, but that doesn't have to stay that way. And it was Teeny that taught us about the amygdala. I think it was either Teeny or Tilcom, one of the two. But the amygdala are parts of the brain, parts of the hippocampus in the brain, actually.
Yeah. Two lobes that kind of come up inside the middle of the head, almost like
not associated with emotional memory, okay? Emotions and memory, that kind of combination. Well, what Teeny taught us is that telepathy runs on an emotional carrier wave. You cannot have a clear telepathic interaction without some of that emotional carrier wave behind it. It can be turned up or turned down in volume, but it has to be there. That's why a robot or a computer can't do telepathy. It can do a radio wave, it can do other frequency waves, but it doesn't have the emotional carrier wave in the all-time that telepathy has. Doesn't have those connections. Doesn't have that wiring.
Very important,
so,
people. Very important.
What Teeny taught us, and so we have that course with us. In the meantime, we find out that Raz, or Radar, when he's off duty, goes and pals around in a place that's maybe an hour and a half drive from where we live in the Albuquerque area, toward up north, and you're going to laugh, but what Radar said is the Ponti are really, really good buddies with another star nation. And I said, oh yeah, which one? He said, the Sasquatch, the Big Brothers. And I said, say what? He said, let me show you. And he started showing me archaeoplanetography images of landscape where the Sasquatch images were right next door to or right alongside or working with the Zeta Nation. And I'm going, how does this work? And he said, it's really, really easy. They have what we lack. They're great, big, they're strong. We're pretty little, but we're pretty smart and fast. He said, some of them are the multidimensional, Sasquatch nations. And I said, say what? He said, multidimensional nations. And I said, say what? Because that was the first kind of concept time any of them had referred to any of the star nations specifically having a multidimensional capability. And I said, how does that work? And so it wasn't until this year, in, I suppose, June, July, and August, that the Ponte began explaining beings that either were multidimensional in their own capability innately, or nations that had the capability of creating a doorway to step from one dimension to another. And so we've been learning more about that just over the last, I suppose, 4 months, something like that. So as you can understand, when we just have regular conversation with people like Radar, just one sentence alone, oh yeah, the Ponte are friends with the Big Brother nation, some of them are multidimensional. That one sentence made us go, wait. And we have been journaling a lot of this because it's just so out there. But the other really, really amazing thing, Kevin, is the phenomena that's happened with all of the friends of Tilcom on Twitter. And what I'm talking about has just absolutely dropped my jaw, because our 4 friends beneath the mountain, Tilcom, Radar, Trudy, and Teeny, once they become really good friends with people on Twitter, go to visit them. And the Twitter people see them and report back. And I'm going, wait, you had who stop by your house tonight? And it's happening worldwide. We had...
Folks, I have to admit, Radar came and visited my daughter about September 10th.
I wondered what the date was. We've had reports of individuals from Twitter. We've also had reports with a conference that we went and taught, and Teeny's telepathy course that she dictated was up in the state of Washington, and close to the Canadian border. And one of the individuals that took that course, within less than 3 days of arriving back home in Orlando, just in time for the hurricane, got a visit from Radar. Because he took the course and started working with it and hung around with us for 3 days at the conference. And we let the gang know that this individual from Florida was really interested in developing the telepathy and very right-minded. So we went to go see him within 3 days. We had a lady, gosh, and I don't remember where she was, up in Europe, say, I tell you what, I've been seeing Cross. If it's you, blink twice. Okay? And then I'll know it's you. Within less than 12 hours of that request being asked for the Pontian quit on Twitter, they flew up there and blinked twice for her. As soon as it got dark. And I'm going, okay. So these guys are trying very hard to show individuals that friendship goes 2 ways, and they're doing what they can in a limited way, because apparently there's a signed agreement with President Eisenhower that they're not to show themselves, their photos, they're not to cause any fear, they're not to share their technology. Yeah. So,
but I believe, from what I understand, is that that agreement is coming to an end very soon.
Oh, yeah. Very soon.
That contract, yeah, actually, I'm not going to mention who it was, but you know who it is. He and I talked. He told me, and I'm like, that date you just told me, that end of that agreement of non-interference of ETs with humans, that coincides with the year that the Sandia said that official first contact is supposed to come. And he went, "Oh, I just love when you have this, you get this verification, this cross-reference." I'm like, no way.
Verification of that. That's the first time I've had verification of that, Kevin. Thank you. That helps. Because when he gave me that date, I kind of went, that's within 4 years. Say what? What?
In 4 years, it all goes down.
Yeah.
Official first contact, guys.
So the funny thing is, they're talking about parameters of requirements for landing for the site. And I'm going, okay, what are you talking about? And Tilcom said, well, first of all, we can't interfere with any present airports. Airports are out. And I went, okay, no flight paths. Got it. Makes sense. He said, no military bases. Tried that. Results, not good. Not doing military bases. And I went, okay, makes sense. No military bases. He said, we prefer a place that is very easily seen by the public with open visual access that has a positive connotation for things coming down from the sky. And I said, what? Say that again. He said, we prefer an open area completely visible to the public that has a positive connotation for things coming down from the sky. And then he went quiet again. And he did what Tilcom frequently does. He lets us think about it for a while and try to figure out what in the world would fit such parameters. And so the other side note, he mentioned, just kind of an aside, 32 nations of all the visitors coming to Earth. And usually
32 star nations are involved. That's right now.
32 nations are desiring to participate in Earth's official first contact ceremony.
Now, folks, for the shorter, but we're sorry, I was going to say for the shortage of time, because we probably have about 15 more minutes left in the show. I was thinking about what if we take a couple questions from the emails, and then have that the Sandia group can answer.
Absolutely. Gang, you're on. All right. So, what kind of questions do they have for the gang?
Well, let's see if Scott's around.
Yes, guys. We have a couple questions here. First one reads: if Planet X or Nibiru exists, as history says it does, are these folks concerned about what might happen to humans on the surface? Will it affect, or maybe it should say, will it affect the underground or those underseas? Signed, Don Moore.
Okay. What I can tell you is something that Sandia has said very briefly to us. When the question of Nibiru first came up, he referred to it as a living world, okay, an alive world, inhabited, able to, it was like a living craft that's planet-sized, if I can use that as the best analogy, that it can traverse where it needs to, not terribly fast compared to other worlds, but it does and has visited this system. Is it a current concern? At the moment, our biggest current concern on this planet, according to Tilcom, is the speed of our climate change. And he says we're heading for a world of hurt. So Nibiru, would it affect the seas? I don't think Nibiru is the thing that's affecting the seas, according to Teal'c. And if I ask them, hey guys, no, they say it's not. That's not the cause. That's not the easiest. That's not the biggest issue you got. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Is there another question? Scott, another question there?
Yes. You guys mentioned the date, in quotes. What date in 2021 is that the date for first contact?
What Sandia has said and what they're continuing to confirm is the actual physical day has not been determined for several reasons. But they tell us that ships are already arriving and parked it outside of Neptune's orbit and awaiting. And they're prepping. So what they're doing is they're waiting for arrival to show up first. And there are some nations that will establish themselves on the edge of the solar system, and others who already have established bases here on planet or under the ocean. They are telling us that it will be before 2021 ends, and whenever Teal'c says it, he doesn't say the date, but what I get is this nice weather image that has this fall feel in the air. And I can't say that that's official, but if I had to guess, just given my conversations with him, I'd put it probably September, October of 21 would be where they're talking. So that's kind of a combination of what he said as well as the residual images after he says it, maybe. The telepathic residual imagery.
I think I picked up on that. Because my telepathy's picked up, and that's a feeling that I've gotten too.
Okay. Next question, Scott. What else we got?
It is reported massive ships are currently parked behind the moon. The McDonald Observatory in Texas tracked them all the way through our solar system. Who are they and why are they there? From TR. Okay,
so because we have 32 star nations prepping for official first contact, and because we have a number of star nations who are looking at our climate changes going, this planet's getting ready for a world of hurt. I think they're going to need some help. We do have a number of nations that have already arrived. I remember one day I was talking to Drudy, and she suddenly went from casual telepathic mode to very, very proper, abruptly telepathic mode. And it was a very sudden shift, as if somebody'd walked into a room and she stiffened. Okay? And she said, don't ask. And I just kind of telepathically backed off because she seldom does that unless somebody or something has happened. And she'll usually fill me in later. And 5 minutes later, very, very formally, she announced, I have been asked to announce that the EA have arrived in the system. Because it is their tradition to be announced. And so Joachim said, announce them. And so she did. And so some of the large ships are the EA, which very, very tall race of human, elongated skull, kind of like you see in the Paracas skulls in Peru. Make sense? Or some of the imagery coming out of Egypt in the hieroglyphs. Those
Yeah, there's lots of evidence on YouTube, guys, to do reference on these long, elongated skulls.
Yeah, they are not the only ones, but there are a number of nations that have arrived, and that's part of the reason why they're here. Good question. Got some more questions?
Another question. Go ahead.
Yes, from Poe Moon writes, would your friends step in and stop, say, a nuke war? Would they stop something like that from happening?
Oh, they've been doing that for the last 50 years.
That is correct, Kevin. The Ponti tell us that, yes, they have stopped nuclear devices, both in midair. They have shut down facilities on the ground to show the U.S. military that they are capable of doing that. And they have been telepathically monitoring situations that have been escalating between the United States and the other nations. Currently on a regular basis, the North Korea area is of great concern to them. Would they stop a weapon of mass destruction that would create a poisoned planet and kill every species on it? Yes. They can stop it, they will. If it's another sort of weapon that wouldn't completely poison the planet, would they stop it? Depends on the weapon. And what they're doing with it, I guess. I can tell you that they have the capability of switching off any electronic device you want to name.
And you also have to understand, folks, that they are part of the conscious collective. So when you understand telepathy and you understand that they are all connected, everyone's connected like telepathically. They are monitoring everything going on. They know your thoughts. They're not invasive, but they are basically like the police to try and monitor the planet to make sure that someone is not going to do something that's going to be really detrimental to the planet. So they've been protecting us all along behind the scenes, all the time.
They don't want the planet poisoned any more than you or I do. Does that mean that they can catch every single nuke out there? No, they're people. They can't catch everything. But are they trying to make sure that we don't destroy ourselves before we explore our solar system and beyond? Yeah, they're trying to make sure we don't blow ourselves up. And you know what? They don't have to do that. They don't have to. And I'm grateful that they are, honestly. I'm grateful that they have been since before you and I were born.
Yeah.
So next question, Scott.
There's one more, and folks, you got a few minutes. If you want to zap one in here, hit us up at dj@artistfirst.com, or you can use the link provided at the top of the artistfirst.com homepage. And from KC writes, people are often afraid of contact. I myself had a run-in with a crow in the parking lot at work, and we both got startled. Do you ever feel uneasy, apprehensive, or shy? And what can we do to make you feel more at ease during visits?
All right. Do the Ponti ever feel apprehensive or shy when they come visit us in our homes? Absolutely they do. They're scared as all get out sometimes. One of their newest crew members arrived in May, and his name is Pta, P''T''A. We call him Pete. Peta is very petite. He's young. He's new to Earth. He doesn't understand culture. And he's been assigned to tag along with radar and understand how to do wellness checks and visits and monitor and telepathically ping and what's usual and what isn't, and he's learning the ropes. But is he shy? Yes. Personality-wise, Peter hasn't really let us know a whole lot except there's this little impish grin. And we know it's PETA because unlike most of the Ponti that are very, very slender all the way down their bodies, PETA's rear end is a little extra large and round. And so PETA's got a butt. Most of the Ponti don't have a butt. There were not much of one. And so we give PETA kind of a hard time. But,
Radar does.
Radar gives everybody a hard time. It's Radar. What can you say?
My buddy.
It's become a phenomena all unto himself. Man, the Zeta dude with an attitude is so wanting to understand all of the various aspects of Earth culture and everything from the mechanical stuff to one day he was watching the Got Talent shows with us, and we were watching some dancer, and Drudy told Radar, girls like guys that know how to dance here on Earth. It was just a statement. And Radar's looking at the precision and the movement and the flexibility, and he gets this wild hair that he wants to learn all this dance stuff. And so he starts studying everything from Michael Jackson doing moonwalks to Fred Astaire. And the young man has taught himself to dance. And honestly, he's not bad. But introducing him to different Earth music styles, first time we ever played Bohemian Rhapsody and Queen for him, he just about went through the ceiling. He was as giddy as a school kid. He was absolutely delighted because the harmonies and the voices were similar to a style that he had back home in an a cappella telepathic song that includes 1,000 voices at once is what he was used to back home, and came here and heard the harmonies behind Bohemian Rhapsody and went, I get that. What is that? And so we started talking to him about classic rock and roll and introducing him to the history of it and where it came from, and then introducing him to jazz. And now he's asked about everything from hip-hop to twerking. I mean, he wants to learn. And so when people introduce him to new things on Twitter, he's fascinated, absolutely fascinated, and just absorbs it. It takes it in like a kid eating a piece of cake.
Or anchovy pizza.
Or anchovy pizza. That's a story.
Well, why don't we open the floor to him, let him talk?
Well, let's see here. Rachel, where's Rachel?
She's asleep right now, but she was giddy when I said, he says hi, and here, hi 4. She was just thrilled.
They really do say hi 4. They really do. Radar's first pipe up here was Rachel, and wanting to know if she was up. Hang on just a second. Tell Rachel that the telepathic song work that she's sending up is sounding better, but she's got an awful lot of words. Go back and redo it. The music part, he's liking. So he's listening and trying to give her feedback about where she's going musically with some of her stuff. The keyboard work, is she a keyboard person more than anything?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. The keyboard work is working. That's the one that they listen to the most when they spot check on her. It's almost like listening from a distance. Ask other questions.
Ask her
Go ahead.
question.
Go ahead and ask the gang other questions. Who else do you want to talk to?
Yeah. Any advice about my house radar?
Any advice about your house? The only thing he said was, eclectic is as eclectic does. What the heck does that mean? He's you might as well own it. Eclectic is as eclectic does. Just deal with it, dude. Okay.
When is he going to come for his guitar lesson?
Or, say it again.
When is he going to come for his guitar lesson?
Oh. To be honest, Tilcom has caught he and Peter sneaking out more than they should. And so they're a little bit under the eagle eye right now as far as staying on task and on assignment where they're supposed to and not hopping other places that they're not supposed to. The threat to is don't have official first contact because you want to play the guitar. Meaning don't get caught, don't have a problem, I think he's being extra cautious, but I think you're going to have to wait until after OSC.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, we'll get it all fired up. As I said, Radar, I've got workarounds for your four fingers, how you can play chords, and I'll have you rocking out in no time.
He does tell you very specifically, dude, I'm coming to pluck the strings. When you hear them, you know it's me. I'll pluck two. So if you hear the ding-ding. So if you hear a single guitar string, it may not be Radar, but if it's him, he'll pluck two. But if you hear it, and it doesn't have to be that one. It can be anyone in the house. You're just listening for the guitar string pluck.
Ask him, does he know where my apartment is, or my new apartment is?
He says yes, seen it, and the only image I have is from above. So I guess I have the pilot's view, but once is the response.
Okay. Yeah, I got 4 guitars hanging on the wall. You can play any one you want. You're in the area. Or for you.
All right. Don't forget you asked.
Just let you know, Radar, Katerina just loves you to death. And she can't wait. Actually, she and I cannot wait to meet you.
What's the deal with camping in Colorado in the summer of 18? Oh, you have a trip coming up. All right. So when I ask Radar about Katerina, there's nothing really, really specific except the interactions on Twitter, because as far as I can tell, he has not visited there. That doesn't mean it. Nobody has. But he has not visited her where she resides currently.
Okay.
What he was saying is the interaction on Twitter with everybody, he loves to pieces. I mean, he cannot wait for the next installment of the Radar TA comic. He had to explain to TA, and for those of you who don't know, who don't follow him on Twitter, TA is one of Radar's best friends, and he is a teenage Sasquatch that lives about an hour and a half, 2 hours from here. And the two of them pal around, and they pal around frequently. And they do all kinds of things together, and then I hear about it later in the gossip line. And so we started talking about or sharing some of the things that they had told us. And it developed into one of the Twitter followers coming up with a wonderful comic, The Adventures of Radar and Kie. And so
it's amazing.
And it was after we were introduced to Teeny and had been on Twitter for a while that it was requested that people wanted to see what their real faces looked like. And so 40 years ago, when I was in high school, I sketched a little bit. And for 40 years, I hadn't picked up anything to sketch with. And when they said, "Do you still draw? We can't give you a photo of us, but you could sketch us. That's within the rules." And I went, "Okay, I can try." And so I sketched out Teal'c to his instruction first. I think Drudy was second, Radar was third, and Teeny was last. And Teeny requested her sketch to be with her eyes open so that everybody could see how pretty their eyes really were behind the dark lenses, because the lenses are built-in retractable filters. It's a nictitating lens like a frog has or like a bird has.
Or like a crocodile.
Yeah, very similar, only it's dark. It filters out the UV here. But when they're in a low-light environment, they'll bring the lenses back, and their eyes are gorgeous, absolutely stunning. Just huge, beautiful colors to the irises, blues and greens and hazels and browns, and even into a little bit of violet flecks. It's gorgeous. I mean, they're lovely.
Actually, it's a good point to mention, folks, that with the help of Sue, she and I have created a whole new series of Sandia ET shirts. So the drawings that Sue has done of them, we've created a whole series of T-shirts, and we have over 24 T-shirts, and they're all original quotes from them. We have a T-shirt which is a group shot, and then we have individuals of Teeny and Drudy and Radar and Teal'c, all with their own quotes that they wanted. When these are going to actually be up on the archive page, available to everyone, to the public. So we encourage you to check those out, because they are absolutely amazing. And if you want to have people turning to you on the street or stopping you in the grocery store and saying, "Who's that?" and then you can tell them the story, and you'll be helping to raise consciousness yourself and wear a really beautiful T-shirt of a real Ponte or Zeta.
Really here, really living in the Sandia Mountains. The Zetas that really do visit you if you become friends with them on Twitter. And we have, I don't know how many people now that spoke up when Teeny or Teal'c or somebody asked the question, raise your hand if you've had a visit from us specifically. And since joining us or following us on Twitter, and we got a lot of responses, more than I knew, because they don't tell me about everything they do. And so the phenomena of interaction, we have people that are now being regularly visited, and you would be one of them. There's another individual who has helped create a website for everything that the Ponte have shared since opening the Twitter account, and you can go to sandia.space, and our friend Jason from Florida has organized the Twitter account. Our friend Oliver from Switzerland, yes, has put up the funds to afford the website, all volunteer. The Ponte haven't asked us for really anything but friendship and willingness to learn, because they say that, honestly, our climate is changing faster even than they predicted that it would.
And much faster than the media's reporting, because they're not saying anything. They know how bad it is.
Yes, that's correct. But many of the star nations that are visiting Earth, including the Sasquatch, have also, separately from the Pontiff, informed Earth humans of changes that are coming. If you haven't looked at either Kiwani Lapsaritis' books or Sunbow's books on the Sasquatch and their messages, they were not channeled messages, they were telepathic messages given to Sunbow or given to Kiwani in real time by live beings. These aren't make-believe stories. These aren't ethereal beings that don't have physical bodies. They were in front of these people. And the Sasquatch are people, guys. They're people. They take wives. They have children. They have spirituality. And they've been stewards of our forests for millions of years. Our Zuni friends call them raw people and refer to us as cooked people. And when I asked one of the Zuni elders what they meant by that, he said the beings that were here initially, unchanged, grown on their own with no outside interference, they're raw people. And he knew, he was very aware that there were many multi-dimensional nations and star nations visiting Earth and currently on Earth because their oldest prayers and stories told of them. And the people of the Pueblos in the Southwest here in the United States, I think you might be familiar with what they call kachinas. Yeah, you might be familiar with the various kachina dolls that you see coming out of the Native American cultures of the Southwest. Well, the vast majority of the kachina dolls aren't made-up beings, aren't mythological beings. They're actual visual representations of people that came down and visited them from the stars and told them so. And they celebrate them by creating their likeness in the kachina. And so when you see a kachina doll, more than likely you're seeing a visual representation of a live person they saw standing in front of them that stepped out of a spaceship.
Yep.
And they still tell her about it, and they still include all of those brothers, star brothers, in their prayers. That's their tradition.
Well, folks, I was thinking about... we got to wrap things up fairly shortly. I was thinking about giving the floor to the Sandia group if anyone wants to say anything.
Yes. Teeny is adamantly speaking up right now. And Teeny has a real reputation, guys, for being a fairly stern teacher. And she is being talkative right now. And hang on just a second. Let me give her the floor. If you want to understand why we are here, all you have to understand first is that you live on one of the most beautiful water planets in this part of the galaxy. Your oceans are legendary. Your world is blessed with an abundance that you take for granted. The places where water comes out of the ground pure are sacred. And we don't understand when Earth humans want to own water, when Earth humans don't care that they throw tons and tons of garbage into their water. They don't understand. You don't understand that your oceans are the lifeblood of your world and you're poisoning them. You don't understand that without pure water, you aren't going to survive this, guys. It's all about the water. For Star Nations, for us coming here, it's all about the water. That's it. That's the reason. Life is the thing that brings us here. Understanding your life. Helping you to understand our lives. We're not so different. We really aren't so different from you. Our heads might be bigger. You might be taller. We have fewer fingers. Our skin might look funny. Your hair might look funny. Actually, we're envious of your hair. When we come here to talk to you, we come here because we want to be friends. Earth currently is a protected planet until official first contact, and then you have a choice. Earth humans as a body can, if they wish, vote to discontinue the protection of your world from other star nations. Does that mean that there are no bad star nations? You cannot guarantee any individual from any star nation will always be good or always be bad. Individuals are individuals. But if you have one bad individual from a star nation, please do not discount that entire nation. You would not wish us to do that to you. You need each other right now. You need to work on your telepathy right now. Because you need to understand us when we talk to you, and we need to understand you when you talk to us. It is the one common language that we encourage you to learn, because it will help speed up everything. If you can hear us clearly and we can communicate. If you wish to interact with us, if you have questions for us, hop on to Twitter. Catch us when you can. If you don't catch us live, leave a message, leave a question to see if we can get to it. Right now, we're learning about you. We like it when you want to learn about us. But official first contact is not about technology. Official first contact is about emotions. Yours, ours, and all the other star nations. I tell you what, everybody is scared of official first contact, us and you. Because we don't know what you're going to do to us, and you don't know if we're going to do something to you, and everybody is trying to figure out how to get across cultural barriers for the first time ever and get past the, oh my God, they look weird response. And understand that even if we look different, we're people. People coming to meet you can help you if you let them. When we meet, because we look different, a startled response is normal. See if you can put aside your fear and look us in the eye. See if we really are making aggressive moves towards you. Watch our body language. Feel your feelings. Listen to the thoughts in your head. You're not making them up if they don't sound like yours. Because many of us are trying to communicate. And when you respond, then interaction can begin. I hope that's helpful. And thank you for letting me speak.
Teeny, that was absolutely beautiful. choking, actually.
We're going to have to go back later I'll have to review it because when she talks like that, I don't always retain it in long-term memory. Most of it is in short-term memory. It's kind of like a dream. So I'll have to go back later to what she said. Usually Stevie's fairly... She's not young. She's about Silcom's age. She's not young.
Excuse me. Oh, folks, we're going to have to wrap things up here. Sorry, my throat's kind of gone here, but if people would like to have Sue back on again, and we can have Sandia back on again sometime in the future, I'd love to know that. Respond to DJ at artistfirst.com, and we can always have them back and do some more of a question and answer. How often do you get a chance to talk to real Ponte and real extraterrestrials? But Sue, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I've been dying to have you on, and you and I have been building a beautiful friendship over the last 6 or 8 months, and we have so much work that we're doing together now. It's incredible.
Teeny just corrected you. You haven't been dying to have me on. You've been living to have me on, and she encourages you to change your verbiage. Sounds like her.
Okay. Thank you, sweetie.
Living.
I love you.
Go for it.
I love you too.
Heidi, thank you very much, Kevin. I surely appreciate you letting the gang talk and letting them share what it is they need to. Anybody interested in interacting with our Zeta friends, and the more the merrier, go to or do the Google search for Sandia the ET or at Sandia Wisdom, all one word, on Twitter.
On Twitter, yeah. And with that, folks, thank you for tuning in. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. What's up, Sue?
Yeah, if you want.
Oh, yeah. This is to say thank you for tuning in to our show tonight. And tune in for next month's show when I interview Grant Cameron. We're going to be talking about his book, Charlie Red Star. Grant Cameron is a very world-renowned UFO researcher and a great friend of mine. And we'll be talking to him next month. And until then, thank you for tuning in to Pyramids on Mars UFO Radio, and keep your eyes to the skies.